Welcome everyone to tonight's District 5 United meeting. District 5 United has been around a little bit over a decade, and we strive to improve the quality of life in East San Jose and citywide as necessary. And tonight we have a couple items on the agenda. The first is Advocating for Safe Streets by Mayra Pelagio with the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition.
Thank you, Juan. All right. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here with you all. So I mentioned my name is Mayra Pelagio, and I am working with the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, or SVBC for short. And I'll have a short presentation about safe streets and advocacy. It's a little bit of a training. Um, are folks able to see my slides? Juan, maybe a thumbs up if you're able to see the slides.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so a little bit about the agenda. I'll talk a little bit about SVBC, the Bike Coalition. I'll give examples of what are some measures that could be taken to create safe streets. I was thinking of having a Q&A in between the presentation, but I think it'll make most sense to hold all the questions for the end. I will talk about advocacy for these infrastructure changes, and I'll have some tips on how to get involved. All right. So a little bit about the Bike Coalition. The mission of the Bike Coalition is to build healthier and more just communities by making bicycling safe and accessible for everybody. And the way that we accomplish that is by centering on three pillars. The first pillar is creating people-centered communities and streets. And that includes making bicycling easy for transportation as well as for like going to get groceries or taking your children to school making all of these bike networks accessible for everybody who wants to go bike around in their neighborhood. The second pillar is called pedal power, and that entails building the power of bike movements with active, diverse residents creating change in their local communities. The Bike Coalition covers both Santa Clara and San Mateo County, and as you all may imagine, that's a large number of cities. I think they cover over 40 cities, and it's a large geography. So the way that they work is with a hyper-local focus in which each city has a local team that can advocate in their local Department of Transportation or the local jurisdictions where some of cities, they don't have a Department of Transportation. So they creating that pedal power is building local teams that can advocate better for their specific neighborhoods across the 40-something cities in the Bay Area. And the third pillar, and I think one of the funnest area of work, is the programs. The Bike Coalition has classes for individuals who might not know how to ride a bike. They teach individuals how to ride a bike. They teach about what is the biking and the law, what are the things that could be done and could not be done as a cyclist. And we have community rights in which in some areas, the Bike Coalition works with the city and they close off the streets to cars for one day or for a couple of hours so that children can, it's come up like a Viva Calle almost, where the streets are being able to be utilized for pedestrians and cyclists instead of having them off for cars all the time. So fun events like that. We have a Halloween ride, and we have a lot of these programs that introduce individuals to bicycling or what life would look like without, having a street open just for cars. So those are the three pillars that the Bike Coalition guides the work around and the community efforts around too. All right, so that's a little bit about what we do. And one of the most important things that we're advocating for is safe streets for everybody. And that includes pedestrians, bicyclists, and even cars, because a lot of this infrastructure also creates safe spaces for cars and prevent fatalities in the streets that we live in. So what are some of the strategies or what are some ways that we can implement some infrastructure that will prevent crashes or cars running over pedestrians? These first four, I have a couple of them, so I have a couple of slides with these measures, but these first four are specific to pedestrian crossings. And you might see these pictures and they all look the same or look very similar, but all of them have different elements that can attribute or like enhance the safety of the individuals walking. So the first one is just a high visibility crossing, and that is what we see almost everywhere where we have the white stripes that allows people on a stop sign to cross the street safely. And based on this, there's different levels of improvement that could be done to increase that safety, right? We have the LED crossing where we have the same pattern of the white lines, but now we also have these deflectors that cars would not be able to like ignore. It would be more visible for cars to see, especially at night when there's pedestrian crossings. And I feel like some folks have seen these where there is the sign and there is lighting around the sign that allows, if you push the button, um, it will blink so that cars are able to see the crossing area. There is also these shark teeth that are on the street, if you can see them here, very adjacent to the crosswalk. However, that provides a distance in between where the cars are supposed to stop and where the pedestrians are, which is often needed. If we think about what the last presentation that was presented in the District United meeting around Vision Zero, where there is a handful of streets in San Jose that are high risk, I guess, corridors where there's a lot of fatalities and a lot of crashes that lead to fatalities. And a lot of these do not have the spacing between the crossing signs. Many of the areas just don't have ample space for pedestrians to be able to cross from one street to the other. So implementing these provides that safe space for pedestrians to have a safe distance between cars and provides that distance if a car is coming really fast to have some space for it to slow down or come to a complete stop without risking hitting a pedestrian. Another strategy is refuge islands. This we see in San Jose around like Alum Rock area. And those are for really wide streets, but also when I was looking at this and I was thinking about relatively new to the transportation world, but when I was thinking about it, and I used to see individuals on these refuge islands, which is the cement right in the middle, I was thinking like, why would people cross and like just stay there? Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel safe. But what I was failing to realize is that sometimes when the street is just so wide that when the timer does not provide enough time for individuals to completely cross, this provides a space where they can rethink their options and whether they'll have enough time to get across, or they can go back and have that safe space and wait until there's no more cars passing and they can safely cross. So this measure would or has saved a lot of lives just by being there and having a safe space for pedestrians who couldn't quite make it all the way across to rethink that option and having that safe space instead of risking running and having the risk of getting hit by a car as they're running to get to the other side. All right. Other infrastructure strategies that help in creating safe streets. Midpoint crossing. I'm thinking specifically around King Road in East San Jose, where like from the Tropicana area or from King and Story to like Tully, there is very few areas where pedestrians can cross. So in order for them to find like a pedestrian crossing, they have to go blocks and blocks and blocks so that they can cross to the other side of the street. And one of the tools that is implemented for creating a safe street is providing a midpoint crossing and reducing the distance in between crosswalks so that there is enough opportunities for pedestrians to get from one side of the street to the other. So you can see in this picture, the first one on the left shows that there is no crosswalk. So individuals just walk across, running the risk of getting hit. And on the right, you can see that when there is a crosswalk, then there's, more opportunity for safety. There's even a refuge island where they can wait because of the street being so wide might not provide them with enough time to cross. Another strategy is the shorter crossing distance. And I'm sure some folks have seen it especially in downtown and areas that are more, they have more parking on the streets. Instead of creating this really wide area that pedestrians have to cross, they kind of like create a curve where there's space on the side for cars to park, but for pedestrians, it minimizes the space or the distance between one street to the other where they can cross, so that shortens that walk distance that they have to do to get to the other side. And other strategies that we have seen, there is the bumps, speed bumps or speed humps. And I've seen a lot of advocacy in different neighborhoods where they want a speed hump or they want a speed bump, and they feel like they really need it, especially in school areas. And I completely like understand and support that. And what I've seen the most pushback around speed bumps and speed humps from the city, from the Department of Transportation or from other departments, is that speed bumps and speed humps are a bit of a barrier for emergency services. So say a fire truck, adding a speed bump on a route that would impact a fire truck or an ambulance reduces the speed at which they can provide that emergency service. So for that reason, I think it's really difficult to approve for the city to approve those projects because of that concern that the speed bump or speed hump will affect negatively the how fast the emergency services can get to an emergency. And other strategies are roundabouts. I think those are also strategies that have been used in the past in intersections that have a lot of traffic and a lot of fatalities. This is a way to manage traffic in a way that can be friendly to pedestrians and bicyclists and individuals who are using the road that are not cars. All right, I'm gonna take some time to look at the chat just in case. No questions yet. Okay, so another strategy is the right angle for turning. I think me as a driver, I experience this firsthand where when I'm turning right and there's a curve, it's so easy for me to just like shift my steering wheel and like really nicely cruise without even knowing what's on the other side, right? And it's so easy for individuals to speed through that curve because there's nothing that's indicating that there has to be like a hard stop before they can make a turn. And that could lead to them having some pedestrians on their blind side and having like unfortunate events where they can run them over. So a good strategy that has been used in the past is having the streets be at a right angle, because when the streets are at a right angle, that kind of forces the driver to stop and look to the right before they can actually make the turn, and have the complete turn be in a safe way where they don't take the risk of running over a pedestrian. One other way that's also really popular is reducing the speed limit. I know most of us, sounds like District 5, we're in District 5 area in San Jose, but if folks have ever been to Willow Glen or other areas near downtown, you probably have experienced how the streets are so narrow and the speed limit is really low, then it's really difficult to accelerate or to run a pedestrian over because you're always having to go really slow to make sure that you're between the lines and you're staying in kind of like the lane. Speed limit in areas like, again, King Road is like 35 miles an hour. And I might be misphrasing this, but I read somewhere that if an individual is going at the speed limit, then if they hit somebody on accident or hit a pedestrian or there's a crash, there is like a 70% or 70 to 90% of survival rate where they will definitely survive individuals. The likelihood of them being severely injured is limited, right? But when an individual is going above the speed limit, that probability decreases significantly and the probability of fatality is much, much higher. So as long as we're going to the speed limit, that is what will reduce the probability of fatality of somebody dying if there is a crash. All right, and I spoke a little bit about this, but the main way that we can keep our streets safe, the main way that we will make sure that there is limited fatalities and there is safety for everybody on the streets is by narrowing the streets. As I mentioned before, in Willow Glen, if folks have been around there or even downtown, in the areas not on Santa Clara Street, but on the areas on the side, the streets are super narrow and they don't allow for anybody to kind of like get off the lane to cause a severe accident when there's pedestrians or cyclists. So the main strategy to improve street safety is narrowing the streets. And we can do this in a different ways. The picture that is shown here has kind of like a bike lane that is protected. I know there's other ways to do it where there's parking included on the streets. I know that in San Jose and in San Jose specifically, it's so important for individuals to have cars because they need to get to their jobs or because there's absolutely no way that they can bike to work or walk to work or take public transit. So narrowing the streets as a strategy in San Jose is probable, but it will definitely take different strategies, including improving public transit and different ways of connectivity across the city. But within the neighborhoods, this is something that is really could be done to make sure that there is protection for everybody. So overall, when individuals are advocating for safer streets, narrowing the street is always something that is very, I think, feasible or kind of like the goal to make sure that there is that space for cars to have that limited speed and have more consciousness about who's utilizing the street aside from cars. Okay, I had mentioned that there was a question section. I see some in the chat, but I might. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Mayra. So I will go ahead and promote the individuals to panelists who have questions. That is Raquel and Nia so far. And so what that means is, Raquel and Nia, if you'd like to voice your question or comment, you can do so. If not, I will go ahead and do so for you. And first up would be Raquel. And first you have to accept the invitation to be a panelist. And Raquel is becoming a panelist. So whenever you're ready, Raquel. And Nia, if you don't accept the invite, I will assume you want me to read the question or comment for you. But it looks like you've accepted it. So go ahead, Raquel. Mayra, did you want to stop sharing screen so that?
Yes, I will do that, and then I'll continue with the presentation.
Oh, okay.
This was the first portion. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Raquel. It looks like you have to unmute.
There. Is that good?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate very much your all of your forms that you had out for us, the change that can be made in the streets. And I'm all for all those changes, but in particular, I would like to see an emphasis first group to be fixed in that way, in particular the lighted, the LED crossing for the schools, because that's where, as you know, I'm sure every single school in our county has had a child or two that's been killed as they're crossing to get to their school. And to me, that should be the priority, to make sure that crossings for all schools are safe for our children and their caretakers. Thank you.
All right, Mayra, don't know if did you want to respond to that, or should I just read the question from the next person?
I think what I can offer is I'm not from the city. I work with a nonprofit that helps with this advocacy. The second part of my presentation is around that advocacy, but definitely agree with the need for having safer streets for children and can provide support on that advocacy if needed.
And actually, so Nia wondered when the James Lick presentation will begin, and it will begin right after this presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. There were 2 items on the agenda. Dan, whenever you're ready to pose your question or comment, please do so.
So I can I'll hit the video too. I understand the presentations, you know, that you're trying to do for traffic calming and stuff like that. The bigger problem that I have with a lot of that is that's assuming that people want to obey the rules, and at least in our neighborhood or on our street, they don't. And you know, we're in the middle of going to have some double yellow lines painted down our street to try and do some traffic calming. I don't believe that will fix anything. But my question is what about getting more enforcement here? And I know that's not your area. I was sort of told that we were supposed to have the chief of police here in these particular meetings, and I don't know whether he's in attendance, but that's really where this is directed. And in terms of your crosswalks and all of that, they're great. We have those crosswalks at our school right now. And the other night I was walking, I was hit by a car in the crosswalk. So, you know, it really comes down to enforcement. The reason why I was hit in the crosswalk in the car is the car blew the stop sign. Plain and simple. Didn't give a shit. Middle of the night, blew the stop sign. There was contact made. So I mean, the traffic calming devices I've seen, they seem to work well, but they work well for the people that want to obey the basic traffic laws. And I see people percentage wise. My office right here views a stop sign, and I'm probably seeing 1% to 2% of people that actually come to a complete stop at that stop sign during the day out of the 100 to 150, and that's day in and day out. So we sort of have that problem, and until we get some enforcement going in there, the speed bumps. The reason why the fire department and services don't like that is if they hit one of the speed bumps at speed on their trucks, they break things, and so it's an ongoing problem. One of the other things that is used in Europe to slow speed down on the street is they put a chicane in, which effectively makes the street into a one lane thing. So traffic has to negotiate when you get things, and that definitely, like I saw a couple of streets that were they were supposed to be 35 miles an hour in Sweden. There were people that were running much faster, and they'd come to the chicane and they'd have to go down to about 10 miles an hour. And I'd love to see one of those right across the street from me at the school. So sorry for the abusive language, but yeah. Anyway, end of my comment.
All right, thank you for sharing that. And the next question is from Jeanette, who doesn't want to share her audio and video. And she says, can you please read, unfortunately, a lot of fatal accidents are due to lack of concern from drivers of pedestrians. Some of these changes may be helpful. However, how do we ensure people adhere to the speed limit? Red light runners are now becoming a norm. Thank you.
Yeah, and Dan, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I could imagine how like traumatizing and how maybe unsafe you felt afterwards, trying to cross your street as well. And similar to what Jen asked, I do believe that narrowing the streets, and that's why I had that initial very last slide, narrowing the streets would force drivers to slow down. And some of those other infrastructure, like the protected bike lanes where there is like those plastic spikes coming up. So maybe having those in between the streets to narrow or to make sure that there is that caution from drivers. Driver behavior is something that is very complex, and I know that there had been a lot of campaigns to educate about Vision Zero, which again was presented about before here in the District 5 United meetings, where there is a hope to reduce those fatalities. But educational campaigns only go so far. The change in the infrastructure is what will force drivers to look both ways, to slow down and to change that behavior that seems to, as Jane mentioned, it's kind of like becoming the norm, especially on our streets.
All right, and the final question is by Marco. Will the bike lanes be put back along San Antonio from Guadalupe Church to Jackson?
That question, I don't have the answer to that. I could look it up. We can keep going to the second part of my advocacy presentation, and I can probably respond to that because there is a bike plan, and that might be in the bike plan in San Jose. But I can share with you all the resources.
All right, Mayra, and we are running maybe a little bit long, so just letting you know that as you wrap up the presentation.
I'll try to make it super speedy fast.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you. All right. Let's see. So what is advocacy? As I mentioned before, and I'm just gonna share it again so that I can have that kind of clarity with you all. I am now part of the Department of Transportation. I am working with a advocacy group, so the Bike Coalition. We have tools and resources to promote this type of projects and to help individuals advocate for the projects. Or unfortunately, even if we say we want to see this crosswalk at this school, that's not what it takes. Usually these projects take a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and a lot of effort and passion to make sure that the city is taking them into account and taking steps toward it. It also takes a lot of money. And as the Bike Coalition, we can also help advocate for that money to get that infrastructure in place if there is dedicated citizens or individuals who want to really push for these projects. So advocacy is an action that speaks in favor of, recommends, argues for a cause,
The meeting,
supports,
I see
defends,
there's a
and
question.
pleads on
All right, thank you.
behalf of
And the
others.
question was, what time is
The
the
way that it
September
works
7th board
is we
meeting?
have the city, the
Again,
county,
thank
and
you
the
all. I
region.
think that
In the
was the
city,
last
we have
one.
the
And
city
so
council
I hope
members
you all
who
have
are
a
really
wonderful night.
important. We also have the city staff who are even most important, believe it or not, because they do all of the work that they help do all of the back work for council members. And I don't know if folks are familiar with it, but we have the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, a BPAC. This is a group that helps the city decide what projects that they would want to focus on. This is a group that has some leverage on helping decide what projects to implement as well. We also have one at the county level. We have transit agencies, including VTAs and Samtrans. We have the Board of Supervisors, and we are divided in different districts as well. And at the regional level, we have MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which covers 9 Bay Area counties. And we have Caltrans, who is statewide. And all of these agencies can provide some support in the creation of a project, depending on what area it falls in. So what should you know before you start your advocacy? If we take the example of a crosswalk near the school, we want to ask, is there a need? It sounds like there is a need because there's children crossing. We want to ask, what is the goal? Do we want just a regular crosswalk? Do we want one with LED lights? Do we want the shark teeth? Do we want to have some sort of like speed hump, right? We want to ask, what's the goal? We want to ask, who are the decisions makers? Is this falling in an unincorporated area of the county, or is it the city council? Does it fall within the jurisdiction of like VTA or Caltrans? We want to ask who could be the potential allies. If the project is already on the pipeline, like a bike lane might be, where is it in the pipeline? What's the priority for it? What are some of the potential oppositions or barriers, like emergency services vehicles, as we spoke earlier? Who are the influencers of these decision makers? If you're super passionate about it and if you know there is a need in your community, these are the steps that you can take to do your advocacy. First, and most importantly, talk to your friends and your neighbors about it. See if this is something that they are also struggling with, and organize. Try to build that power that will get you to talk to city council, talk to the city staff, and building that political support and public support toward a project that, if you're talking to neighbors, you know that they're impacted by it as well. So it's not just you, you're building power by numbers. You can write letters, make public comment. You can go tabling, flyer, spreading awareness. You can build a coalition. The Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, if it's about a bike lane, we are more than 100% down to help and support in any way that we can. We're also happy to help building coalition for pedestrian safety as well, but most importantly for bikes. I think the center for us is bicycling, but we're happy to provide support in other projects that promote safety for pedestrians and everybody who uses the streets. You can also write op-eds and you can post on social media. So there's different ways in which you can advocate. You can also join a local team. The Bike Coalition has local teams, as I mentioned, and they are city-based. And this is for folks who live and play in the city that they live, in the city that they're located, and that they want for folks who want to advocate for making their community safer for people walking and biking. So what do we do in local teams? Basically what I described, organize and advocate. If there is a campaign that individuals are really passionate about, we support that campaign. For example, like accelerating a project or a bike lane in certain neighborhoods. We helped with pushing with setting up city meetings with city staff and other elected officials to make sure that that project gets to the place where it needs to get to make it a reality. And there's other ways to get involved. Take a look at the bike plan. I can search really quickly for the bike for the streets that somebody mentioned and give an answer after the presentation's over. You can subscribe to your city council's agenda, contact your city staff, attend the BPAC, the committee that I mentioned before, make friends with the people in the committee, or even participate yourself in that committee. You can provide public comment and write letters. And most importantly, if you're interested, if something in this presentation called out to you, please contact me. You have my email here, Mayra@bikesiliconvalley.org, and my phone number as well. in case that you're interested in joining the local team or starting your own campaign, or really passionate about what a project that you're envisioning in your community, I'm happy to help in any way that I can.